by a man's fingernails, by his coat sleeve, by his boots, by his trouser knees, by the callosities of his forefinger and thumb, by his expression, by his shirt cuffs. By each of these things a man's calling is plainly revealed. That, all united, should fail to enlighten the competent inquirer in any case is almost inconceivable. Human behavior, facial expressions, and lies, that is to say, everything that lies behind our actions, movements, or poses, have always been an object of interest and research, leading to a number of studies on nonverbal language and on proxemics, thanks to which in everyday life, in work and international relationships, and even more in police investigations, more attention is paid to details. And details, along with the knowledge of certain elements and the deductive method, are just what make Sherlock Holmes the greatest and most famous detective of all time, the first to apply the scientific method to criminal investigations. Sherlock Holmes is a literary character created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle at the end of the 19th century. He is the protagonist of 4 novels and 56 short stories that belong to the genre of deductive detective fiction that began with the creation of Auguste Dupin by Edgar Allan Poe in 1841. The character of Sherlock Holmes was inspired by Joseph Bell, a cold and brilliant surgeon with great deductive abilities. The adventures of the consulting detective are mainly narrated by his friend and biographer, Dr. John Watson, a sort of Doyle alter ego. Even after many years, Watson is still astonished by Holmes' qualities and tries every time to outline in the most faithful way, but with admiration, the different traits and capabilities of the detective from Baker Street. In every short story and every novel, a new enriched view of the character of Sherlock Holmes is revealed and new particulars arise. Sherlock Holmes is a brilliant, eccentric, and partly cynical man who often tends to isolate himself. Furthermore, he is endowed with an extraordinary physicalness. In fact, according to what Watson reports, he is an expert boxer and swordsman. He has deep knowledge of chemistry and biology, above all concerning poisons, drugs, and tobacco. He remembers unnumbered criminal cases whose circumstances he does often apply to other cases. He is an excellent violinist, speaks German, and is an expert graphologist.
Are you familiar with the study of graphology?
I've never given it any serious thought, no.
The psychological analysis of handwriting. The upward strokes on the P, the J, and the M indicate a genius-level intellect.
Holmes devotes his mind and his body 100% to the problem he is faced with, whether it is finding a new chemical solution or solving a case of international importance, alternating dreary periods of deep boredom, during which he also takes drugs, with others in which he is able to work without sleeping for days. This way, Sherlock Holmes, together with Dr. Watson, helps his customers solve unusual cases and solve crimes that the police consider as impossible, using methods that are often illegal. The investigator created by Arthur Conan Doyle is the most portrayed literary character in movies, and many are the actors who played Sherlock Holmes. But the most famous image of the detective is for everyone that of Basil Rathbone, who portrayed Holmes in 14 films from 1939 to 1946. Holmes' best-known catchphrase is
Elementary, my dear Watson.
that is used when he explains with smugness the solution of a case to his friend Watson. Nevertheless, this phrase is rarely used in the adventures written by Doyle. In fact, it was introduced in theater adaptations and later became popular thanks to movies. Therefore, the phrase and the image of the detective wearing the deerstalker and smoking the peculiar bent pipe are later inventions. A more recent example of the Detective of London is that proposed by the filmmaker Guy Ritchie in Sherlock Holmes, released in 2009, and Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows, released in 2011, in which a more modern and bohemian version of the detective is shown, with a number of action scenes and comical scenes, thanks to which the film caught the attention of a wide public. In the 2009 movie, Dr. James Moriarty, Holmes' nemesis, appears for the first time and plays a key role in the sequel. In broad terms, the 2011 film refers to the short story The Final Problem from the collection The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. With this story, the adventures of the investigator ended, at least temporarily, that is, until Sir Arthur Conan Doyle decided to bring his character back to life due to the pressing criticisms and protests of the readers. The Final Problem introduces Professor Moriarty, who behind the facade of a philanthropist and distinguished professor actually runs a secret criminal organization, against which Holmes has enough evidence to bring it to its knees. Nevertheless, due to the threats made by the professor, Holmes is forced to live with his lawyer friend Watson, even if he realizes that he can't escape Moriarty forever. Sherlock Holmes says the professor is an enemy on the same intellectual level as his, and describes him as the Napoleon of crime. In order to worthily complete his mission and thus free society from the presence of such a wicked man, Holmes knows he will pay a high price. In fact, he faces Moriarty in Switzerland, and, according to what is reported by Watson, falls with his archenemy down the Reichenbach Falls, leaving the doctor a letter with some specific instructions in order to condemn the members of Moriarty's organization. The movie Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows enriches this short story with action, gunshots, hilarious moments.
You're drinking embalming fluid.
Yes. Care for a drop?
You do seem
Excited?
manic.
I am.
Verging on
Ecstatic.
psychotic.
Turning points and the misgiving of future unavoidable wars.
The year was 1891. Storm clouds were brewing over Europe. France and Germany were at each other's throats, the result of a series of bombings. Some said it was nationalists, others the anarchists. But as usual, my friend Sherlock Holmes had a different theory entirely.
From the beginning, Holmes realizes that the person behind these attacks is his archenemy, Professor James Moriarty, whose moves he has been observing long since. Facing a series of adventures, first in Paris, then in Germany, and finally in Switzerland, Sherlock Holmes will manage to catch Moriarty in his trap and reveal his dark plans, taking over the armament industry and spark off a world war. It is a long chess game that Sherlock Holmes will win thanks to Watson's invaluable help, since he will have to apply the learned methods to prevent the worst. In fact, during a peace summit in Switzerland, it turns out that a man in the pay of Moriarty, pretending to be one of the ambassadors, thanks to reconstructive surgery, is commissioned to commit a murder with a view to triggering a war.
So perhaps it's the opposite. A failure to behave naturally. An actor so consumed with his performance that the one characteristic he cannot accommodate is spontaneous reaction.
Just like in the short story, Sherlock Holmes is driven by the will to neutralize the terrible and insane Moriarty. Therefore, he does the only thing Moriarty would never expect. He throws himself down Reichenbach's Falls, pulling the professor down with him. Although the character portrayed by Robert Downey Jr. is different in many aspects as compared to the image of the calm and reflective detective that comes to mind thinking about Sherlock Holmes, many are also the traits and details that fit. Reading one of Doyle's stories, the reader cannot understand why Holmes did something unusual, like stopping at a corner or sending a telegram. Similarly, in the movie, it is not clear why the camera frames for a longer time a particular image, like a book or a personal diary. Moreover, Sherlock Holmes' method is applied in all its nuances to the case at hand. First and foremost, not being influenced by what newspaper report and not making a hypothesis without having collected data.
It says here he died of a heart attack. Has all my instruction been for naught? You still read the official statement and believe it?
Then gaining as much information as possible through observation. Using disguises as often as not, as in the final problem, and catching all the details that usually are not evident, like some ash on the floor. Once clues and evidence are collected, it is possible to go on by a process of elimination in the resolution of the case, remembering that when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth, and, if necessary, frame the offender breaking into his house, as in the adventure of the Speckled Band, or going after him and even shooting him, like in the Sign of the Four. Certainly, the character created by Doyle is more rational than sarcastic, and more endowed with mental than physical strength, but he surprises both the reader and the spectator, leaving in both cases the strong feeling that it is impossible to fully understand all the nuances of such a many-sided and fascinating character. A character that had a great importance and influence in the history of literature, and that not only continues to inspire other heroes of comics, TV series and movies with his method, but reminds everyone how important giving attention to details is. Those details that are often the key to reach the truth.
Who delivered this parcel?
The postman.
The usual chap, or did he look peculiar?